If you recall, earlier at the opening of the show, I told you, or I asked a question about how do you ensure that your children who are making use of the internet are doing this rightly so that those who are predators online do not take advantage of them. If they are on online platforms, do you monitor what they are doing there? Do you even know what you should be doing for every child of yours? Do you know that what you need to do for a child, maybe a child less than 6 years old, perhaps it should be different from the one older? And what exactly would you need to do to ensure your child's safety online? This is what our next guest will be talking about. He is Robert Ford Nkusi, the president, Rwanda Software Testing Qualifications Board, and he joins us from Kigali, Rwanda this morning virtually. Good morning, Robert.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
Welcome to Early Exchange. All right, let's look at...
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Ensuring child safety online. Recently, there have been reports from even foreign countries, Western countries really, that have shown problems with children using several social media platforms. Now, one of them is TikTok, which is alleged to not have ensured enough child online protection and is currently having some challenges with the agency in Europe. And then recently too, there is a lady, Ruby Frank, who used to be someone on social media who offers parenting advice, but she's bagged a 30-year jail sentence after admitting to physically and emotionally abusing her children. But prior to that time, she had millions of followers who listened to her parenting advice online. So this issue with influencers online and platforms online for people online, how do we go about it? Children are given smartphones and even devices from a very, very young age. So how do parents ensure that they know how to use these devices, they know how to engage on platforms, and they do so safely?
Thank you very much for that very interesting topic on how society can keep our children safe online. It's a very important subject that has been taken on actually globally. United Nations under the ITU has set guidelines, global guidelines on child online protection. And as we speak, there are 9 known child online protection threats currently. And those include threats like sexting, where children are involved in sending messages between themselves that are of sexual or explicit nature. We have had online grooming, where you have had children using online tools to ensure that other children are in a level of discomfort. We have had threats like fake news and misinformation. We have had issues like screen time, where children are spending excessive amounts of time on the screen, and that is crippling the level at which their brain can be able to process things normally. Then we have explicit and inappropriate content, which I talked about, cyberbullying. We have online reputation, online pornography. We have self-harm. We have radicalization, where young children from a very early age have been radicalized, and using the online resources, they have been able to learn how to make bombs. They know how to commit suicide using bombs and blowing themselves up. And they have been taught how to hate one race or one group of people. Then we also have a lot of child online privacy theft, where people are stealing information about children and using it inappropriately. So all these are the different known threats, online threats to our children. However, we need to, in discussing this, we need to understand, who do we categorize as a child? What are the different categories of children? By understanding that, we are able to discuss how do we mitigate online threats at what point of these different categories of the children. So we have 5 known categories of children. The first child is the pre-born child, which is a period between 0 to 9 months. Now, you may ask me and say, how possibly can it be that an unborn child can be affected by online threats? Yes, that is actually potentially possible. Actually, the biggest threat that the world needs to combat now is the threat of that category, the unborn child. There is a research that was made in a small country where between a period of time of about 5 years, women between the ages of 23 to 30 had 70% of children of women who conceived in that bracket, who conceived during that period of time of about 3 years, all had miscarriages. And so this called for a research to understand why is it that women in this period of time, between the age of 23 and 30, more than 70% have had a miscarriage and at a pregnancy of 5 months. So this called for a research. When a research was conducted, they came out with a very interesting finding, that between that period of time, a TV station in that country had acquired a series of movies. They are movies which are acted, and it's a series. And it was running between a certain specific period of time for most of this, for in that country. So most women in that age bracket were spending so much time watching this captivating series, and most of them would not go to ease themselves when time came, for fear of losing part of the TV series that is running at the time. Now, by holding urine for too much time, the bladder would be pushing I don't know if you call it a placenta, but where the baby is confined in the womb, and that would be prolonged for so many hours. So at the 5th month of the pregnancy, there would be so much pressure to the child that there would be a miscarriage. This was as a result of an online content that is being run on the national television. This is just an example of the impact of online activity to an unborn child. Parents, especially mothers, who are undergoing moments and periods of stress as a result of online content. If you are spending time WhatsApping and on Twitter and on all these social media activities, and you're not doing any form of exercise, actually the online content and online activity is constraining the level of exercise you're supposed to have for a safe delivery of a baby. So this was one of them. The other one is the preschool, 0 to 3 years of age. This is when the child has been born and is exposed to gadgets and materials that he has found into this life of ours. Telephones, remote controls, keyboards, gadgets that we use to play games. And the kid is having this and picking them and either eating them and you're always fighting and say, hey, put this down, put this down. There is a digital activity within a child's life at the onset. Then we have the young children, 6 to 10 years of age. This is when they are able to pick a phone and answer, or you are driving and you say, okay, talk to daddy and say, how are you, daddy, who is in the office or is on a mission. And this time, they know how to manipulate these gadgets. They know how to make a call. They know how to, and then you have the preteen, which is 11 to 13. And this is now the most volatile. This is the most delicate age group where young people are entering into their teenage and they're beginning to explore their bodies and to explore life and to make opinions about politics and about culture and social attitudes and social values. So this is a period where they are connecting with their friends and they are speaking about a lot of things. And so the content they're exposed to has got to be properly supervised so that they do not have access to wrongful content. Then, of course, you have the teenage age, which is between 14 and 19. Now, this is where most things really go wrong. We will go wrong when we talk about radicalization, when we talk about sexting, when we talk about grooming. All these others come within this age bracket where they now have full control and understanding of the digital devices that we are exposed to, and then they are able to manipulate them for their use. So, and now with the new because really technology moves so fast. It's so fast that what we had in yesteryears that we were used to, it changes by the minute. Now we have AI with us. We have people who use AI tools to be able to impersonate people, to be able to impersonate children. And you find your children being used in an act of pornography, for example. And yet this child has never gone to a brothel. This child has never gone to a street. This child has never exposed her body to anybody. But AI is able to access her Instagram or Snapchat and be able to manipulate some of the videos she could have innocently posted and use those videos to impersonate that child. And you find she's a super pornographic actor when she's never been to a brothel. So all these things are coming at such a fast speed that processing it as parents and being responsible as either parents or as teachers or as caretakers or as being custodians of children, wherever we are, could be politicians, that we need to be vigilant, we need to be alert all the time to ensure that our children are safe as they navigate the cyberspace. And they need this technology to learn, to connect,
Let's look at the EU's probe into TikTok over alleged failure to protect minors. Now, you've given an example of how some predators online could, through AI, use the accounts of some minors for very, very bad and harmful things. Now, is it dependent on the parents alone or also the platform to ensure the protection of users, particularly minors? In the case of TikTok, where the EU is alleging that it's failed to protect minors, and how can the platform ensure protection of users?
I think it is a must. It's a multi-stakeholder responsibility. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It's not the responsibility of one person or the other, or one sector of society or the other. I think it's for everybody. I'll give you an example. A telecom provider is one who brings the internet capacity to your house, but there are actually known ways in which you can make settings on the modem that is delivering internet to your house to secure the content that is being delivered to your house, and that way protecting a minor. There are specific settings. Television, DSTV, for example, there are specific settings that you use using your remote control to be able to make sure that certain settings are put in place to make sure that children are not exposed to unsuitable content that they could consume and be affected ultimately. So, but then you ask yourself, how many hours or how much time does a child spend at home? Probably not so much. You find that in the end, the child is spending so much time at school, or is spending so much time at a community center, or spending so much time of the day at the church. So you need to be able to balance, given the different age groups that I already described in my earlier submission, and then be able to know what category is my child, and where is he spending so much time, and how much digital content is he accessing or consuming. I think it's a multi-stakeholder responsibility for all of us.
The responsibility for all of us, specifically for the parents. Now let's look at the responsibility of the platform. Now for a platform where you have all kinds of users of different age group, what should be done to ensure that there are no, or minors are not exposed to harmful content? Is it even possible?
And that's actually the beauty of AI. AI could be negative and could be positive. It could be positive at the same time. You can actually use AI to be able to determine who is consuming what on what platform. I'll give you an example. It is easy for me and you that if anybody could be able to see what on two of our phones, if you had your phone and I had my phone, and I look through what is on your Instagram, for example, even if I've never seen you, I'll be able to say, this must be a phone belonging to a lady of this age bracket. Because with AI, we are able to use these gadgets to customize what a specific person is watching. And that's a good thing in one way, because then I can be able to determine from the platform point of view to be able to know that this is being watched by a minor and this is being done by a minor. And because of that, I could be able to send an alert to the owner of the gadget or to a responsible parent and be able to say, I believe this content is potentially being watched by a minor, and this could be dangerous for them. So the platform has this huge responsibility, and they already have tools at their disposal to be able to do that. In Rwanda, for example, we have what we call the National Cybersecurity Agency, which is responsible for regulating and putting in guidelines on how content is used in general, for everybody in general. And because of that, we have three major laws, guidelines in Rwanda that guide us. One is the open data policy. Secondly is the personal data privacy policy. And the third is this data sovereignty policy. These three policies converge at a crossroad where government has control of what data is being consumed by who, and for all the best of reasons. To say who accesses data on military installations, for example, who accesses data on medical reports. You know, if you have a patient and this patient is diagnosed with this kind of disease, who actually has a right to access this content, and for what purpose can he use this content for? If it's a student, what kind of content is supposed to be consumed by students? So In doing this, the platforms are given guidelines, and because they possess the tools of how to monitor, look at the content, look at the kind of of the digital ecosystem that exists in a country, it becomes very easy for them to mitigate some of these pressures that come with the dangers that come with online activity, and specifically online content consumption.
All right, so in the case of TikTok now, where according to the EU, it has failed to protect minors, what do you think would be the consequences, and how would this affect other social media platforms?
That's an interesting question. You need to understand what does TikTok, what are the values and the principles that TikTok stands for. I think, in my understanding, is that it's a social media platform that helps people to connect and helps people to share information that is suitable. I think their goal and their purpose is that this information should be suitable for consumption by the different varieties of people. When you look at platforms, they give you a whole range of settings where you can keep yourself secure. But coming to your question, how, because of what has already happened, how is it likely to affect the users? It's going to affect the users in a variety of ways. One is that people access these social media platforms for different reasons. Now, from the commercial point of view, these tools are used for commercial reasons, for advertising, for providing information about the different range of products that are being given to the people. If there could be regulation that restricts operation of such social media in specific communities, then that's a constraint revenue being generated through advertisement, for example. That could also be a constraint to understanding how specific products are consumed, because these are platforms that are being used to educate the population about how best to access and consume certain products. That's from a trade point of view. But from a social point of view, some of these platforms are being used for truly and honestly good moral values. Some are being used by churches, some are being used by community centers, some are being, for all the best of reasons. So if there must be a regulation that constrains their existence and operation in certain jurisdictions, then that means that these good values that are imparted to society through these channels will now be constrained. That's a negative impact. However, for the sake of a child, for the sake of the morals that are being instilled in a generation that is going to be in control of society in next years, in the next generation to come, in terms of protecting what is going to be imparted in their brains and making sure that we have noble society in the future, we may have to forego certain benefits right now. Certain regulations may have to be accepted for us to be able to prepare a world that is good for our citizens tomorrow. I think that's the best way to look at it.
All right, in preparing a world that is better for us, for all, even for the elderly, for the very young, and for children, for the future. Now, the schools in England have given new guidance intended to stop the use of mobile phones during school day. But according to one school leaders union, it's a non-policy for a non-problem, because they say that the use of mobile phones by school-aged children are mostly done after school hours. But the government, the UK government, is putting out this policy, according to them, to reduce the level of disruption and distraction during school hours. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think it's something that African schools should also copy, although there are some schools that don't allow the use of phones, but some do.
Well, I have two ways to look at this. The first way is, what is the mode of education delivery in schools today? And how is that different today, meaning in the digital era? And that compared to the mode of delivery of education in yesteryears. Then we need to be able to see what is it that there is within the educational sector, especially for Africa, that is of educational content to compel a child to use a mobile phone, even at school. I'll give you an example. During COVID-19, when we were all locked down, I need you to just quickly imagine, had COVID come at a time that is different from this digital era that we are in today, what would have become the fate of the world? How could we have managed different things that we're able to manage? I know that governments functioned, the state machinery functioned because we are living in a time in which we live today. Students went back to school virtually and obtained necessary education that they were able to obtain during COVID. And the list goes on and on and on. So if I was United Kingdom and wanted to come up with this kind of guideline that restricts children from using mobile gadgets during school time, I would first ask myself, what is it that there is that these students would need this phone for during what I term the school time? Is it possible now for a child to actually get a class while she's at home because that morning there was a lot of ice and she could not get the train or a school bus to take this child to school? And because there are these gadgets, maybe this child can be able to get this delivery on a mobile phone or on a computer. And so these guidelines should come in place with a much deeper and critical foresight on the kind of impact that it will have, and be able to evaluate especially the positives that this guideline brings. You may end up restricting children from using mobile phones so that you can be able to get them onto a classical, traditional way of education, which is not really as strong as it used to be when we never had these digital gadgets with us. And then you find you're constraining a good process through which child could have gotten better education.
Robert will be joining us shortly to continue the conversation, but he's written several things that's supposed to serve as tip and guide for parents on how to manage the reputation of the awards online, because you realize that these days children have accounts on social media platforms, and some of them are even influencers, very, very active on social media. So how can parents even help them manage their reputation? What are the things that they can do? What are the information about themselves that they are allowed to put out there, and what should they know about interacting, engaging with people? Because online, it's flooded with different kinds of human beings, and so among them you have predators, those who want to prey on minors and do very bad things to them. All right, so Robert is back. I was talking about some of the things you've written, tips on how to how parents can protect their minors online. One of them is helping them manage their reputation online. Can you speak to that?
Maybe before I go to that, there's one very big principle that we need to know now, including you, that we need to be friends with children. Try to find to establish some bond and connection with your child that gives them the trust that they need to believe in your counsel and in your advice. Different parents, specifically African parents, have over the years not mastered the art of how to communicate with a child, especially when it comes to protecting a child from any form of danger, not just an online danger. We tend to rush out to blame a child for having done what they have done because we know as parents that that's dangerous. But a child was trying to explore. A child does not have a level of intellect like you have as a parent. So most of the time in Africa, we've just rushed out to say, oh, how could you have crossed the road? Or how could you have climbed this tree? But all that comes when the danger has already happened and we have not prepared them. So one is creating the bond. But two is when it comes to online, to these online dangers, have a conversation as a parent. Find out what your child is doing online. Ask them to tell you about what they do and what sites they like to visit. This is very important. Agree on boundaries. You are a parent. You pay subscription for that internet connection to that homestead. Be in control. So have a family agreement on where and when they can use the internet and how much time they can spend on the sites they can visit and the type of information they can share. I'll give you an example. When we were growing up in our time, we didn't have internet when we were growing up. Internet hadn't come. So the only online content we consumed was on national television. So when our father picked us and dropped us at school, at home from school, we would rush from the car, run so fast, because anyone who would be having a remote control at the time would be a king in the house, because you determine what movie is going to be watched or what program is going to be watched. Today, in a similar situation, when children are being dropped from school at home in the evening, you get in the house and who do you see? It's the father and mother seated in front of the television, watching TV. And it's like that house is a ghost house. But if you want to know where everyone else is and you have called them to come for dinner and no one is coming out, just go and disconnect that internet modem. And you see all of them coming out of their holes and say, what has happened? What's going on? What has happened? That shows you how generational culture in terms of the kind of digital age we are in has completely changed. So agree on boundaries. Just say, if it's dinner time, it's dinner time. No one comes with a mobile phone on the table. No one is watching TV when we're on the table. This is family time. This is a time for nutrition. Check if it's suitable. Find out what kind of content is being consumed and know if it's suitable. Get them glued up about social networking. What is social networking? Most children are just posting things anyhow, including an address of their home where a pedophile has easy access to a child. So they need to know on social media, these are things you cannot share. You cannot share private information about our home. You cannot show where daddy sleeps. You cannot show where daddy keeps his security gadget. You cannot tell how daddy parks the car in the garage. Because you'll be providing tips to a potential criminal who could come and do something terrible for you. This is how, in my view, a parent should be able to communicate and behave with a child.
For teenagers, is it tougher or a lot difficult to have this, to make this happen?
Trust me, teenagers are the hardest to control because they have gotten to a time in life when they believe they know. You were a teenager. I was a teenager one time. There are times when we get, especially the ages between 13 and 15, when we actually even think we know better than our parents. We get so convinced because the world is right in front of us. We can move in the night and nothing happens. We've started going to the gym, so we've started growing muscles. Our voices have changed and they've become deeper. And I mean, our body mechanism has changed. And this kind of gives people a feeling, especially teenagers, that they're in control. And many times they don't know they are not in control until hell has broken loose. So yes, it's a very volatile age bracket, the teenagers. And that's why the boundaries are very necessary during this period of time. They have to know, and you know very well, this is a time when most parents set curfews. You say, well, I know very well you have friends, we know your friends, we know their parents, we value your friendship, and we honor the parents of your friends and everything, but it's 8 o'clock and it's 8 o'clock. You can't be out beyond that time. If that's the case, you have to stay out, or you have to sleep out of this house. These are the rules of the game. These are the boundaries we've set. And these are the do's and these are the don'ts. But you do it in a friendly way so that they know that you're not doing it because you're trying to become a dictator and becoming too authoritarian, but you're doing it to protect them.
All right, thank you very much, Robert Ford Nkusi, for your time with us on Early Exchange, talking about how to ensure the safety of minors online. I'm sure that lots of parents who have listened today will watch the show have benefited, particularly when you talked about for even the child in the womb, what the mother consumes can affect the child. That was really, really insightful. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me, and thank you for a very interesting show that you're running, and I think it's beneficial to very many people, not just Nigerians, but everywhere. We're watching you in Rwanda as well.
No, thank you so much.
Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.